Pulp Fiction isn't just a movie, it's a cultural phenomenon. Ever since Quentin Tarantino dropped it back in 1994, fans have been obsessed with its dialogue, its unforgettable characters, and the way it turned chaos into pure cinematic art. From John Travolta and Uma Thurman twisting across the dance floor to Bruce Willis bringing tough authenticity, as the weary boxer Butch, the cast helped stamp the film into history. People love it because it feels unpredictable, stylish, and just plain cool. From the diner stick-up to that famous dance scene, every moment sticks. But here's the thing. No matter how many times people have quoted it, rewatched it, or argued about the briefcase, Pulp Fiction still holds secrets most fans have never noticed. The cast themselves have revealed little-known stories and hidden details that can entirely change the way you see the film. So, what exactly did they spill? And how many of these secrets have you missed all this time? Stick around, because once you hear them, you'll never watch Pulp Fiction the same way again. The reverse filming of Mia's adrenaline shot, Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, didn't just hit theaters in 1994, it flipped the whole idea of storytelling on its head. With its chopped-up timeline, razor-sharp dialogue, and characters that feel larger than life, the film didn't just succeed. It exploded into a cultural event. It scored Tarantino and Roger Avary an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, made over $200 million on a shoestring $8 million budget. And still, 31 years later, people can't stop picking it apart for clues, connections, and secrets that slip past casual viewers. But that's the magic of Pulp Fiction. No matter how many times you've seen it, there's always something hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. From Vincent Vega's surprisingly odd reading habits to the mystery of a stolen dance trophy, Tarantino laced the film with small details that reward anyone paying close attention. It's proof of his obsession with the tiniest touches and his encyclopedic love for pop culture. Take that jaw-dropping overdose scene with Mia Wallace. You know, the one where Vincent slams an adrenaline needle into her chest and audiences nearly jump out of their seats. But here's the secret. Travolta never actually stabbed Thurman. Tarantino filmed it backward. They started with the needle already against her chest, then pulled it away. Later, in editing, the footage was reversed, creating the illusion of the violent plunge. It looked intense, it felt intense, but it was all movie magic. And that unsettling detail of Mia foaming at the mouth? No CGI, no fancy tech, just Campbell's mushroom soup smeared around Thurman's lips. It's a weirdly simple solution, but it worked, and it gave the scene that gritty realism without risking the actress's safety. Even the casting choices in Pulp Fiction hide little surprises. Take Lance, the laid-back drug dealer who helps Vincent save Mia. He's played by Eric Stoltz, but here's the twist. Tarantino originally gave him two options: either play Lance or take on the role of Jimmy, the bathrobe-wearing character Tarantino himself eventually played. Stoltz picked Lance, but the funny part is, no matter which way he went, he was ending up in a bathrobe. That's Pulp Fiction in a nutshell. On the surface, it's all unforgettable dialogue, violence, and unforgettable characters. But once you dig deeper, the behind-the-scenes details are just as addictive. Every rewatch feels like pulling back another layer, and suddenly, the movie you thought you knew looks completely different. Steve Buscemi's cameo as the Buddy Holly waiter. Everyone remembers Vincent and Mia's iconic dance, but not everyone realizes who's playing their waiter. That Buddy Holly impersonator taking their order? That's Steve Buscemi. Yep, the same guy who tore up the screen as Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs. Most people miss it because his face is hidden behind the thick-rimmed glasses and that retro wig. But if you listen closely, the clue is in his voice. When Vincent asks if the $5 shake has bourbon in it, Buscemi's nasally "no" gives him away instantly. It's a blink-and-you-miss-it cameo, but that's exactly the kind of move Tarantino loves to pull. By planting familiar faces in unexpected places, he ties his films together like pieces of the same cinematic puzzle. It's subtle, it's playful, and it rewards fans who pay attention with that aha moment when they finally spot it. the mystery of who keyed Vincent's Malibu. And then there's one of the most debated mysteries in Pulp Fiction. Who the hell keyed Vincent Vega's Malibu? At first glance, it feels like one of those random throwaway lines with Vincent talking about someone trashing his car. But here's the kicker. Tarantino himself revealed that the vandal was none other than Butch. Think about it. We see Butch and Vincent cross paths in Marcellus's bar, and the tension is off the charts. Vincent throws shade. Butch is visibly annoyed. And then later, he spots Vincent all chummy with Marcellus, the very man who just strong-armed him into throwing a fight. If ever there was a motive for a petty revenge move, that was it. And this tiny detail changes everything. Suddenly, that later bathroom showdown between Vincent and Butch doesn't feel like random fate. It feels like payback brewing in the background the whole time. It's Tarantino's way of layering his story, giving even the smallest moments ripple effects that pay off in big, dramatic ways. The Band-Aid on Marcellus Wallace's neck. Nothing in Pulp Fiction is ever just random. Every detail has meaning, whether you catch it the first time or not. Take Marcellus Wallace's Band-Aid. For years, fans have obsessed over that little patch stuck on the back of his neck. Some came up with wild theories that it was covering the very spot where the devil stole Marcellus's soul, which he then locked away in that glowing briefcase everyone keeps arguing about. It became one of those mysteries that fueled endless late-night debates about what Pulp Fiction was really saying. But here's the truth. It wasn't symbolic at all. Ving Rhames had nicked himself shaving his head before filming, and instead of hiding it with makeup, Tarantino left the Band-Aid as it was. He knew that tiny, unexplained details like that have power. They get under your skin, spark curiosity, and make the world of the movie feel bigger, stranger, and more alive. The infamous briefcase. And then there's the crown jewel of Pulp Fiction's mysteries, the briefcase. Every time Vincent flips it open, he dials in the code 666, the so-called number of the beast. It's a tiny detail, but one that instantly fueled fan theories that whatever was glowing inside had something supernatural about it, maybe even Marcellus Wallace's soul. The truth? Tarantino has never revealed what's inside, and that's exactly the point. The briefcase is one of cinema's greatest MacGuffins, an object that drives the story forward without its actual contents ever mattering. Still, that hasn't stopped fans from obsessing over it for decades. Theories range from the stolen diamonds in Reservoir Dogs to Elvis's gold suit from True Romance to, of course, the Soul Theory. But Tarantino himself has kept it simple. He once explained that the briefcase is meant to be whatever the audience wants it to be. That ambiguity is what gives it power. It becomes a mirror, reflecting whatever mystery or meaning the viewer projects onto it. As for that unforgettable golden glow, it wasn't special effects or Hollywood trickery. The crew literally rigged a battery and light bulb inside the briefcase, so whenever Vincent cracked it open, Travolta's face lit up in that eerie, mesmerizing shine. Combine that with the ominous 666 code, and suddenly the briefcase becomes more than a prop. It's a symbol, a question mark, a riddle. Tarantino leaves deliberately unsolved. The Fox Force 5 connection to Kill Bill. Now let's talk about Mia Wallace's little dinner table story. We all remember when she tells Vincent about her failed TV pilot, Fox Force 5. At first, it sounds like a quirky throwaway moment, a funny anecdote that adds to her charm. But in Tarantino's world, nothing is ever just a throwaway. That conversation was actually the blueprint for something much bigger. Fast forward almost a decade, and we see Uma Thurman again, this time leading Kill Bill. Her character heads up the deadly Viper assassination squad, a ruthless team of female killers who echo the exact archetypes Mia described. The blonde leader, the Japanese kung fu master, the black demolition expert, the French sex symbol, and Mia's knife-wielding alter ego. They all found their way into Tarantino's blood-soaked revenge saga. It's one of those connections that makes you realize Tarantino's films aren't just movies. They're pieces of a creative universe where ideas simmer for years before exploding onto the screen. Fox Force 5 wasn't just a funny story, Mia told Vincent. It was a glimpse into the future of Tarantino's imagination. What sounds like a throwaway line today could be the foundation of an entire film tomorrow. And sometimes, those connections come in the strangest places, like a cereal box. Lance's Monster cereal is a recurring Tarantino Easter egg. When Vincent stops by Lance's place, take a look around the kitchen. Sitting there on the counter is a box of Fruit Brute cereal, one of General Mills' monster-themed cereals that was discontinued back in 1982. By the time Pulp Fiction was filmed in 1993, it was already a nostalgic relic, a little wink to anyone who remembered it from their childhood. But here's where it gets even more fun. Fruit Brute also shows up in Reservoir Dogs. That means it isn't just random set dressing, it's a deliberate Tarantino Easter egg. It's his way of stitching his movies together, sneaking in these tiny playful nods that make the worlds feel connected, even if the characters never cross paths. Vincent Vega's modesty, blaze, reading material. And speaking of details that reward a closer look, let's talk about Vincent Vega's reading habits. Throughout the film, whenever Vincent heads to the bathroom, he's got his nose buried in a paperback copy of Modesty Blaze, a pulp novel by Peter O'Donnell. At first, it feels like nothing more than a background detail, just Vincent killing time. But if you know Tarantino, you know it's never that simple. The choice of book is intentional. Modesty Blaze is about a female spy and criminal with combat skills, which feels like a sly parallel to Mia Wallace's story about her Fox Force 5 pilot. Suddenly, Vincent's bathroom reading connects back to Mia's world, adding another layer to the film's web of references. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Tarantino's love for the character didn't stop at Pulp Fiction. Years later, he even executive produced a 2003 direct-to-video movie titled My Name is Modesty. Clearly, this wasn't just a random prop, it was something personal to him. But Vincent's reading habit isn't just a quirky character detail, it's also deadly. Both times we see him lost in that book, trouble strikes. First, during the diner robbery, and finally in Butch's apartment, where his bathroom break and that paperback end up costing him his life. It's a subtle, almost poetic way of showing how something so small can seal a character's fate. Vincent and Mia May have stolen the dance trophy. Probably one of the most iconic moments in Pulp Fiction is the dance scene at Jack Rabbit Slim's. Vincent and Mia take the floor for the twist contest, and what we get is pure movie magic. But behind the scenes, Uma Thurman wasn't exactly thrilled. With John Travolta already famous for his moves in Saturday Night Fever and Grease, Mia nervously told Tarantino, "You expect me to dance with John fucking Travolta?" Tarantino passed that on to Travolta, who coolly reassured her to just shut up and twist. But here's the real shocker. Tarantino didn't even write the role with Travolta in mind. The scene existed long before he was cast, but once Travolta signed on, Tarantino admitted it felt like fate. Suddenly, the audience would get to see him dance again, and it instantly made the moment more iconic. Then there's the music. The track playing during their twist is Chuck Berry's You Never Can Tell. Thurman wasn't a fan of the song as she felt it didn't sound quite right for the scene. But Tarantino insisted it was perfect, and of course, he was right. That quirky rhythm now feels inseparable from Vincent and Mia's playful, hypnotic dance. But here's where things get even juicier. When Vincent and Mia leave Jack Rabbit Slim's, they're holding a massive trophy. Most viewers just assume they won the contest. But if you listen closely later in the film, during Butch's storyline, a TV in the background reports that the Jack Rabbit Slim's dance trophy has been stolen. Vincent never actually says they won, he only says they did get it, before quickly changing the subject. That tiny background detail flips the whole scene on its head. Maybe Vincent and Mia didn't win at all. Maybe they just swiped the prize on their way out. And honestly, doesn't that fit perfectly with who they are? Flawed, impulsive, living outside the lines of morality. It's one of those sneaky little Tarantino touches that rewards the viewers who don't just watch the movie, but listen to it. The famous monologue is partly taken from another movie. Just like the diner detail with Vincent and Mia, there's another hidden gem sitting right in plain sight. Jules's unforgettable Ezekiel 25:17 speech. Everyone remembers it. Samuel L. Jackson, gun in hand, delivering those chilling lines about vengeance. It sounds biblical, ancient, like something carved in stone. But here's the truth. The line is not actually from the Bible. Tarantino lifted most of it from a 1976 Japanese martial arts flick called The Bodyguard, starring Sonny Chiba. The original version even ends with the line, "And they shall know that I am Chiba, the bodyguard, when I shall lay my vengeance upon them." Tarantino swapped out Chiba's name, gave it a biblical polish, and suddenly it became one of the most iconic movie speeches of all time. But it gets even better. That monologue wasn't even written for Pulp Fiction in the first place. Tarantino originally planned to use it in From Dusk Till Dawn, his vampire horror collaboration with Robert Rodriguez. In that script, Harvey Keitel's preacher character was supposed to deliver the passage to vampires. Imagine that. What became one of cinema's most badass gangster lines was almost a vampire sermon. And that's what makes it so Tarantino. He doesn't just recycle old lines, he remolds them, reimagines them, and drops them into moments where they hit harder than you'd ever expect. It's not about accuracy, it's about impact. And Jules's Ezekiel speech? That's impact in its purest form. Pulp Fiction contains a lot of Tarantino's hallmarks. Now, Pulp Fiction doesn't just live off its dialogue. The film is packed with Tarantino trademarks, those little signatures that fans love to spot. Take the famous trunk shot, for example. You know the one, when the camera stares up from inside a car trunk, giving us the perspective of whatever or whoever is down there. Tarantino used it in Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill Volume 1, Death Proof, and of course, Pulp Fiction, when Jules and Vincent pop open the trunk to grab their guns. Tarantino swears it's not a trademark, brushing it off with the excuse, "There's nowhere else to put the camera." Still, at this point, it's undeniably his thing. And then, of course, there are the infamous foot shots. Tarantino's fascination with bare feet has become almost as famous as his dialogue. You see it in Kill Bill Volume 1, Death Proof, Inglourious Bastards, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And Pulp Fiction? Oh, it's right there too. Uma Thurman's Mia Wallace spends most of her screen time barefoot. Esmeralda, the mysterious cab driver, gets a lingering close-up on her feet. And, to top it all off, Vincent and Jules have that now legendary debate about the meaning of a foot massage. It's these quirks, whether it's a camera angle or a fixation on feet, that make Tarantino films instantly recognizable. They're not just random details, they're signatures, tiny stamps of personality that tell you exactly whose world you've stepped into. The movie resurrected John Travolta's career. And speaking of fingerprints, one of the biggest belonged to John Travolta. By the time Pulp Fiction came around, his career had stalled. He was a superstar in the late 70s and early 80s with hits like Carrie, Saturday Night Fever, Grease, and Blowout. But after that, the momentum fizzled. Funny enough, the role of Vincent Vega wasn't even meant for him. Tarantino originally had Michael Madsen in mind, hoping to bring him back as Vic Vega, Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs. But Madsen was already locked into Wyatt Earp and couldn't make it work. That opened the door for Tarantino's shortlist, and it was a wild one. Alec Baldwin, Andy Garcia, Michael Keaton, Sean Penn, Dennis Quaid, and even Chevy Chase. And then there was Daniel Day-Lewis, who actually wanted the role, but Tarantino turned him down and rolled the dice on Travolta instead. Around the same time, Travolta also passed on another Tarantino project, Seth Gecko in From Dusk Till Dawn. When Quentin asked why, Travolta didn't hesitate. He told him, "It's simple, Quentin. I'm just not a vampire." In the end, Travolta only made $100,000 playing Vincent Vega, a shockingly low figure by Hollywood standards. But it was the smartest career move he ever made. Pulp Fiction catapulted him back into the spotlight and kicked off his full-on 90s comeback with Get Shorty, Michael, Phenomenon, Broken Arrow, and yes, even Battlefield Earth. Uma Thurman wasn't Tarantino's first choice to play Mia Wallace. And while Travolta's revival was one of the film's big stories, casting Mia Wallace was no less dramatic. Believe it or not, Uma Thurman wasn't Tarantino's first pick. He considered Isabella Rossellini, Meg Ryan, Daryl Hannah, and Michelle Pfeiffer before her name even entered the mix. Two big sitcom stars were in the running too. Julia Louis-Dreyfus had to turn it down because of Seinfeld, and Tarantino later admitted the role came down to just two women, Uma Thurman and Jennifer Aniston. But here's where it turns juicy. When Quentin finally offered Thurman the role, she actually said no. Her agent had advised her against it. Tarantino, being Tarantino, refused to let it go. He called her directly, grabbed the script, and started reading the Mia and Vincent restaurant scene to her over the phone. That little taste of his vision was all it took. By the end of the call, Thurman was in. The part of Butch wasn't written for Bruce Willis. Butch might feel like a role Bruce Willis was born to play, but here's the twist. It wasn't even written for him. Originally, Tarantino pictured Butch as a young, hungry boxer on the rise, and Matt Dillon was the frontrunner. Dillon loved the script, but when he told Tarantino he needed to sleep on it, Quentin shut the door. He wanted a yes or no right then and there. That's when Tarantino flipped the script. Literally. He reimagined Butch as an older fighter whose glory days were behind him, adding a whole new layer of tragedy to the character. But even then, Willis wasn't his first call. Mickey Rourke had the chance, but turned it down to chase his real-life boxing career. At the time, he brushed the script off as nonsense, only to admit later that he just didn't get it. And Rourke wasn't alone. On Quentin's shortlist for Butch were Sean Penn, Johnny Depp, and Nicolas Cage. Just imagine any of them in that pawnshop basement scene. Wild, right? But in the end, fate swung Bruce Willis's way, and Pulp Fiction scored the perfect Butch Coolidge. There are some interesting details relating to the weapons in the movie. And then there's the matter of the weapons, a detail so subtle most viewers miss it entirely. When Butch sneaks back into his apartment to grab his father's gold watch, he stumbles on a gun sitting on the kitchen counter. Moments later, Vincent walks out of the bathroom, and in a blink, Butch uses the gun to end him. Now, the obvious assumption is that the weapon belongs to Vincent, that he carelessly left it there before heading into the bathroom. But here's the twist. It wasn't Vincent's gun at all. It was Marcellus. Turns out, Vincent and Marcellus had been staking out Butch's place together. When Marcellus left to grab coffee and donuts, he left his gun behind. That one small decision sets off a chain reaction that changes everything. Tarantino couldn't use all of the music he wanted for the movie. And speaking of details most people miss, let's talk about the music. Because as much as Tarantino is known for his dialogue and wild storytelling, his soundtracks are just as unforgettable. The surf rock, the retro vibes, the way every song feels hand-picked to burn into your memory. It's a huge part of why Pulp Fiction feels the way it does. But here's the thing. Tarantino didn't actually get every track he wanted. Take the pawn shop scene, for example. When Butch picks up that samurai sword and heads back in, the song blasting is Comanche by the Revels. But Tarantino's original choice? My Sharona by the Knack. The timing was brutal, though. On the very day the studio reached out, the Knack had just been offered a deal with Universal to use the song in Reality Bites, a young, hip comedy starring Winona Ryder. Guitarist Burton Aver, Holly Johnson, the band's singer, even sent a letter explaining that the overdose, panic, and foul language in the film made the connection too negative for them. But that's the thing about Tarantino. When one door closed, he was already digging for inspiration somewhere else. And his sources? They were as wild and eclectic as the man himself. Tarantino took inspiration from diverse places. The seed for Pulp Fiction was planted in a 1963 horror anthology called Black Sabbath, the same film that gave the legendary metal band its name. Like Pulp Fiction, Black Sabbath was split into 3 distinct stories, and Tarantino loved that structure. He and Roger Avary even gave their script a working title, Black Mask, after a gritty crime magazine from the 1920s. For Tarantino, the thrill was in breaking the rules. He explained that he wanted to do something novelists often got to play with, but filmmakers rarely did. Tell 3 separate stories and let the characters drift in and out of each one. His goal was to take those old predictable crime story tropes, things audiences thought they knew, and twist them until they went completely off the rails. Still, the behind-the-scenes politics were just as tangled as the script itself. Before the movie hit theaters, Tarantino convinced Avary to give up his co-writing credit and settle for a story by mention. Why? Because Tarantino knew the phrase, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, would hit harder in the promos. And then there's the curious case of Linda Chen. She was a script editor Tarantino trusted to look over all his early work. Amanda Plummer's character, Honey Bunny, was even named after Chen's pet rabbit. Chen later joked about Tarantino's messy first drafts, describing him as a functional illiterate and a terrible speller. In fact, she said the very first draft of Pulp Fiction read more like The Diary of a Madman. Oh, and here's the kicker. That draft, it was 500 pages long. If Tarantino had filmed it word for word, we'd be looking at 8.5 hours of screen time. The studio were not big fans of the script at first. But here's the thing, when the script first started making the rounds, not everyone was impressed. The first studio to bite was TriStar, who actually optioned it before Miramax got involved. Sounds promising, right? Well, not exactly. Mike Medavoy, the head of TriStar at the time, read the script and didn't hold back. His feedback? Too demented. What's going on? Someone's dead and then they're alive. And the real dagger? He called it the worst thing ever written. With that, TriStar threw the script into turnaround, basically saying thanks, but no thanks. And once that happened, every other studio passed on it too. All except for one, Miramax. And as history shows, that one yes was all Tarantino needed. The film was an instant smash and critical darling. With TriStar out and every other studio turning up their noses, Miramax swooped in and gave Tarantino the green light. And honestly, that one yes changed movie history. Because when Pulp Fiction finally hit theaters, it wasn't just a success. It was a full-blown cultural earthquake. Critics and audiences lost their minds. Roger Ebert handed it a perfect 4 out of 4 and praised it as so well written in a scruffy fanzine way that it made formulaic Hollywood screenwriters look like amateurs. He even went further, calling it the most influential film of the decade. Janet Maslin of the New York Times was just as blown away. She marveled that Tarantino, a self-taught filmmaker, had delivered something with such depth, wit, and blazing originality that it instantly put him in the top tier of American directors. She crowned it both the hottest and coolest film of the year. Of course, not everyone was on board. Kenneth Turan at the Los Angeles Times wasn't impressed, accusing certain scenes, like the pawn shop sequence, of feeling like creative desperation, as if Tarantino was scrambling for ways to shock. But reviews like his were rare. The numbers don't lie either. On Rotten Tomatoes, Pulp Fiction boasts a 92% critic score and an even stronger 96% audience score. Over on IMDb, it's sitting pretty with an 8.9 out of 10, locking it in at number 8 on their all-time top 250 list. Not bad for a script that one studio once dismissed as the worst thing ever written. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Tarantino almost gave us a Pulp Fiction prequel. There could have been a Pulp Fiction prequel. If you remember, Michael Madsen's Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs was actually Vic Vega. And yes, he's the brother of Vincent Vega, the slick hitman John Travolta brought back to life in Pulp Fiction. Tarantino even revealed that he named the brothers after singer Suzanne Vega. And there's a deleted scene where Vincent casually mentions to Mia that Suzanne is his cousin. But Quentin didn't stop at Easter eggs. He actually toyed with the idea of a full-on spin-off movie called Double V Vega. The plan? A prequel set in Amsterdam that followed Vincent and Vic together, long before things went south in their respective stories. Sadly, it never made it past the brainstorming stage. Still, imagine the chaos and the cool that movie could have delivered. Which Pulp Fiction secret shocked you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.